Welcome back to episode 103 of the Disorganized Wizard Club podcast. My name is Alex, and here's always with Adam.
Hello.
And Cam.
Hey.
And we're a group of auto-based players who play just about anything and everything we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
Most definitely.
This week, coming in with another DWC After Dark.
Oh, yeah. This
Late
is late
night
night
recording.
recording. Yeah.
Yeah.
Busy week, busy schedule for the Wizard squad lately. Trying to keep up on Magic, life, jobs, you know. You know how it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I've been playing a lot of Standard, trying out a lot of stuff. This format's really fun.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
Standard is great right now.
And
confirmed. It's just incredible.
One of the most interesting things is it's been how many weeks since the set came out? 2? 3?
Two.
Feels like 2
we
months.
haven't had any big tournaments yet, so the format just still feels really unresolved, I guess.
There are multiple is it 5-0 lists
People are just doing whatever they want still,
and 5-0ing.
yeah,
You know, and that's the kind of only information we have besides the Star City Classics and Opens, which are a little more focused. But yeah, no, people, you can play anything. It's sweet. Like, it's really sweet. Standard's a lot of fun. There's lots of options. You're not probably really wrong on a lot of card choices. I think this is a benefit of the Pro Tours being later. I hope they stay later in the season.
yeah. Well, when is the Pro Tour? It's in a couple weeks, right?
It's
have
like
no idea.
6 weeks after release, I believe, or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, they moved it to the middle of the format now,
Yeah.
right?
That's so long.
That's awesome. We have another month of just
Jeez.
wackiness.
Yeah.
But I mean, Star City will, I'm sure, shape things a little more whenever that in some standard Grand Prix. But still, I mean,
Well, yeah, we have a Standard Grand Prix this weekend.
Yep.
Is there 2 of them? 2?
New Jersey this weekend and
No.
New Jersey next 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now, yeah.
Sorry. I don't know what the other one is.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean,
Lille, I think.
yeah, maybe. This is just a function, I think, of Ravnica standards. Because your mana is good.
Mm-hmm.
You can try lots of things. It's a function of multicolored cards. You know, being spread out across multiple colors and multiple archetypes.
Multicolored formats are really the best formats.
Yeah, it's colorless formats that are hell.
Yeah.
Think about the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Please see the last 2 years of Magic.
Yeah, like
If
it almost
you- if
killed
you think
standard.
otherwise.
Artifacts suck. Eldrazi suck.
Right. Like the last couple years were just horrendous for standard. And what are the defining features? Colorless creatures and artifacts.
And bans.
Yeah, and standard bans and a bunch of bans.
Yeah.
It's just awful. It's so miserable for Magic. No, like all the decks, just because of the way artifacts work, end up so focused and linear, and there's no room for anything else.
Even Saheeli combo is basically artifacts. She makes the tokens she makes are artifacts.
Yeah, exactly. Kill you with infinite artifact creature.
Yeah.
Wow.
They wouldn't
Fill it
have banned it
out
if they weren't artifacts.
Yeah, exactly. Had to. No other choice. I mean, it's a tune with Aether as well, obviously, but that's an artifact card, basically.
Energy does run artifacts.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
It powers the machines.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the same as
There
the
you go.
artifact lands when those were banned, right? Because it's just a land with incidental upside of another resource.
Yeah. Kaladesh is an evil place. Like an evil, evil place. You know, Ravnica, the home of life and unity. You love to see it. Just a happy, positive place, a utopian sprawl.
Well, that's if you're in a certain area of the city, right?
Well, and I'm just saying that it's a heterogeneous space, you know, open to all. It's an inclusive space. It's a diverse and inclusive space, Ravnica, you know?
Got that right.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas
Got-
Kaladesh is like,
Speaking of diverse and inclusive
Wow.
spaces, on our Patreon, we hit our first stretch goal this past week.
oh, I thought you were going to say
I thought that tied into Wizard Tower.
Yeah. I was going to be like, that's a sick ad transition. You blew it.
Whatever, we can salvage it.
No, I wanted to plug our Discord.
Okay. Oh,
As
yeah,
the-
that
as
is.
the-
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
all right. Well played. Well played.
So, if you've been listening to this show for a while, you would have heard that we started our own Patreon, and we hit our first stretch goal last week. So our DWC custom tokens are already being commissioned. Really excited for those to get out there.
Yeah, whenever we finally get them. We're waiting on the art commission still, but so it'll be a while. But
Yeah,
for the
we'll-
patrons, we're going to send out some custom DWC tokens for you.
Yeah, and we'll put the initial sketches in the Discord. If you're interested in getting in on this action, you can find us on patreon.com/DWC podcast. If you want to support the show, get in on this Discord.
I can't even keep up.
Yeah, it's been
also
good
just
so far.
been incredibly busy few weeks for Cam and I. It's midterm season.
Yeah.
So it's rough, but
yeah, on note of the stretch goal, just wanted to give a huge thank you to everyone who's supported the cast, all of our patrons. It means a lot to us, and it's sweet. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah.
It's also just fun answering questions and just being involved in the Discord. For me, I like it, even though I've been busy in the last week or so, but it's cool to just see people talking about decks and what they think and tournament ideas and, how to get better, right?
Yeah.
You see it a lot. People, okay, I've been playing like this, what should I do? A lot of questions about, vast array of different ways to improve at the game. So
yeah, it's been awesome. And your support means the world to us, and we're looking forward to the future.
Oh, yeah.
And on that note, the future will always be sponsored by WizardTower.com, your source for Magic singles, free shipping on singles in Canada. Yeah, check them out for other great content.
Yeah, they do some drafts, like stream drafts and other articles. Commander's Brew Podcast, check them out if you're into EDH.
Yep.
And the brew life.
Yep. Yeah, great sponsor of this cast.
Happy to have them sponsor us.
WizardTower.com. All right. We got a lot of standard to talk about today.
Yeah, it's wild.
Lots of crazy deck lists, a lot of crazy card choices. And we kind of wanted to focus in on, with all these deck lists floating around and just really no consistent best deck, I guess, in the format yet. We wanted to talk about how to identify weak points in all the decks that you're testing. Because this has been really beneficial for us for finding our lists that we think have a lot of potential and finding those weak points and then, moving the process forward.
Yeah, oftentimes it'll be, you'll have some idea, or we'll have an idea and you'll test it out. And your idea, because you're not the greatest at brewing, your idea was bad. And you notice a bunch of weak points in that deck list, but there's also some things, that weren't so weak, and you can then mix the strong parts into other decks, and that's kind of how we come up with lists.
Yeah, it's like titrating, You got to sift through, okay, that card was actually good. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep that, discard the rest. Try again. To fail again, fail better strat.
Yeah.
That's how you build a good deck. It's just a fine diamond compressed over time.
Yeah, but I think it might be good to use an example from one of the decks that we've been testing a lot. Like you, Adam, you've been saying you've been playing Grixis a lot online.
Yeah, been playing a lot of Grixis Control.
And I want to talk about a few of the card choices. You said you've been playing Negates, Disdainful Strokes main deck for Bolas. I want to kind of just ask you, from your initial list of this Grixis deck to where it is now, like what changes? What have you dropped certain cards, added other ones? How has it evolved, and how did you identify those changes and why they had to be made?
Okay, so initially, a lot of the Grixis version I played, although it was on the 5.0 list, there was a Grixis fake news deck, which I had also posted in the deck dump, and that was originally what I had started with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't really enjoy the way the deck wanted to play Bolas plus fake news. I thought it was interesting to double discard someone on 3 and 4, but I didn't, if I was behind it all, it felt really awkward. Like if they just played a History Benalia.
Just so everyone knows, fake news is disinformation.
Oh, yeah.
That is the card we're talking about.
Yeah, if somebody plays it on, if you're on the draw and you kind of are priced into playing it on 3 into a History Benalia, then Bolas, that curve does not look good versus a single History of Benalia, in which your Bolas is probably chumping a 4/3 knight.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of moved away from Disinformation Campaign into just a bunch more removal and counter spells, like 2 Essence Scatters, 2 Negates, a Disdainful Stroke, 4 Sinister, Sabotage, 4 Bolas, some Woman of Cravings. So just some early interaction. I played some Shocks too, just to tag Llanowar Elves, because if you can just buy yourself some time usually against those decks, it's good. You can also just hit a Glowspore Shaman out of green-black on the draw, and then you untap and have your 2-drop, like your Essence Scatter up, and that's been really good. Negates, I think, are maybe the most contentious card, mainboarding Negates, but I've played against a lot of control. I find there's a lot of control, and having them has been really, really good on the turn following Bolas. if they're trying to instant speed remove it and they make the mistake of having instinitis and they want to cast on my turn and I get to untap, having the negate and on turn 5, let's say negate and sinister sabotage has been really, really good. Negate whatever their removal is, and then I still have sabotage for their turn. That's been really good. Disdainful Stroke been surprisingly excellent. Stops a lot of the problem cards that you're worried about, like Eldest Reborn, Planeswalkers.
Have you found you've missed the engine aspect of Disinformation Campaign?
No, because I just play Chemist's Insights. And I think they're really good with the amount of control we've been seeing, just because you can jam it, and then if it doesn't get syncopated, you're good.
Yeah.
I think that my list could stand playing some more syncopates, though. I think that's maybe I could switch to that. Because in the control mirror, syncopating things, and against some green-black decks, just having things exiled can be really important.
Now,
especially at Chemist's Insight. But yeah, the reason I like Chemist's Insight over the Disinformation campaigns was mostly just control mirrors. I can pitch Dead Moment of Cravings, which is a really important card in Standard right now, in my opinion. And so in the control matchup where they're dead, you can just pitch them. That helps a lot. And then you have this sort of main board answers.
What other win conditions are you playing? Have they changed at all since you started?
So 4 Bolas, 2 Eldest Reborn, and a Ralzeric.
Okay. So no Doom Whisperer, no Dream Eaters.
No. Oh, yeah. This was something I should mention as well. Initially, I had played Doom Whisperers, and I don't think Doom Whisperer is good in Grixis control. At least in my construction of it, especially after moving away from Disinformation Campaign.
Yeah.
Mostly because a 5-mana 6/6 flyer, if you're control and you're on the back foot or in any way versus a mid-range deck and they just chupacabra it right away, it feels really bad, because it means your Grixis control, your life total is probably threatened a bit. And so surveilling can be really risky. You don't get a ton out of surveilling. So just having a sorcery speed 5-mana 6/6, have been pretty medium. So I switched it out and just went way more control heavy. And I played 2 copies of Expansion Explosion, and they were okay. And then I went down to 1 just because ever drawing 2 I wasn't happy with. But drawing 1 I was always happy with.
I think that's an interesting point, because one of our things on our show notes here is when we want to talk about how to identify weak points. One of them is comparing finding a card's average case scenario when you cast it. And you were talking about how, because of the nature of control strategies, the average case of Doom Whisperer is a lot worse in control decks than it is in mid-range decks.
Yeah, exactly. Because, versus a mid-range deck, they're going to, if you're the mid-range deck with Doom Whisperer, the control opponent's going to be using removal and other things along the way. And then you play the Doom Whisperer and maybe it sticks. But, 4 Bolas helps. But they usually have enough that they can deal with a Bolas and Doom Whisperer. And, then if you want more creatures, you're sort of priced into also playing Dream Eater. And then we're looking at a deck that has 10 to 12 4 to 6 cost creatures in it. And also possibly Ralzeric, possibly Eldest Reborn. Then we're looking at a curve that is miserable. Your odds that you have a hand that's 2 to 3 land and 3 or 4 to 6 drops is pretty high. You have Chemist's Insight, all these other things that if Vraska's Contempt. And I went up in the number of Vraska's Contempts. A lot of people didn't play as many, and there's more. We're going to end up talking about this, but looking at the deck lists, recently there's a giant increase in the amount of Planeswalkers that saw play. So that was my reasoning for an extra Disdainful Stroke, negate, and Vraska's Contempt's main, because that's what kills you as control. And I think that was the problem with Jeskai for me.
Okay, fair enough.
So those are my card choices.
Yeah.
I think I played around with one, maybe one, what's it called? Dream Eater, just to see. I've had it in and out in the list. It's fine. Sometimes it's good in the control mirrors, but you don't really need it. I also wanted to say I've been really impressed with Ralzeric.
I've been very impressed with that card as well.
I didn't think, I thought it would be medium, and I think it seems really medium still, but when you play with it, looking at 2 cards instead of just the Obnixilus style +1 draw card, looking at 2 and binning 1 is just huge. It's such a massive difference.
Yeah.
It's just so much better. And the minus actually is online a lot.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Yeah, no, it protects itself really well. It's really threatening. Yeah, no, I think it's surprisingly good.
Yeah.
And the one of, Expansion Explosion is exactly, I think, also a sort of case. I guess the Doom Whisperer is the case for me that I just play at sorcery speed. It would die. They would untap and play a Planeswalker because of the increase in Planeswalkers. And I was like, all right, I'm done with this card. I'm just done.
You're not getting the same late game effect out of your Doom Whisperers in a control deck.
Whereas Bolus, if that happens, it got a card.
Yeah. At least it did something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
Surveil's fine, but it's not worth a card.
Yeah.
It's just not worth a card. And that was why I was like, I can't afford to have that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Expansion Explosion. I was like, I just can't afford to draw 2 of these early, especially if you're thinking you're playing like Doom Whispers in your deck and Dream Eaters. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So, it's a lot lower to the ground on its removal, just a bunch of early removal. I think, 2 Radical Idea just in case I need them early to get lands because you don't want to miss your land drops. And then, yeah.
So I want to hone in on this first point here. When you're identifying weak points in deck lists that you're testing, which is the compare fail state to average cases that Cam mentioned. So you have an example with your Doom Whispers. It's average case versus fail state, and I think, Cam, you have an example too from Green White Tokens because you've been playing that list a lot, right?
Well, not a lot. I played it in Montreal and I've been busy since. I actually haven't been playing that much Magic.
Yeah, he's just been.
But it was it was this point as well, as I mentioned on the last podcast, that led me to swap the Tender Shoots main for Thorn Lieutenants because the average case of Tender Shoot was that it left around 1 or 2 1/1 Saproings, and then it died.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were 3/3s for a moment, but then, Tender Shoot died and they were left uninspired. So I was thinking, like, that's generally what this card's doing, but it's doing it for 5 mana. Thorn Lieutenant also, like, its fail state is it dies immediately and it leaves a 1/1. So both their fail states are pretty similar, but then the average case of Thorn Lieutenant is that it bridged me to the mid game, it garnered a bunch of damage, it can use mana late, and it had so much more play to it than Tender Shoot did that the difference between its fail state and its average case was larger, and its fail state was the same as Tender Shoot, so it seemed like a pretty easy replacement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting deck, change to make based on these sort of criteria. And I think it's important.
Yeah.
I guess it's sort of exactly what I'm saying about card choices as well. Just the number of having all these Doom Whisperers and Dream Eaters in my deck was the fail state is just incredibly bad as opposed to just playing Vraska's Contempts.
Yeah.
Where the fail state is like, I kill that and gain 2 life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jumping off topic a little bit, with the amount of Planeswalkers we've seen and the huge increase in all these mid-range decks seem to be trending more and more big. Do you think the Golgari decks should be adopting Vraska's Contempt, moving maybe a little bit away from the 4 Chupacabra package, or where do you think we're at? Are we there yet even?
It's close. It's definitely close. But I think that might require a shift in a lot of what they're doing. Because at the same time, it might be... I think that the green-black decks that are just playing more Planeswalkers is the better solution. I would rather play threats than answers in that deck. Because being really proactive in those decks is probably more important.
You probably don't even need to just move towards Contempt in those decks because you could just play Trophy.
Yeah, I mean, it can play Trophy. I mean, they could just play more Walkers, you know, and just have threats being in Vraska.
Yeah.
Right? 6 mana Vraska, Relic Seeker. Especially because they play Llanowar Elves, and Jade Light, Merfolk, Branch Walkers, so they can hit their land drops. And then, it's easy to just on turn 5 with a Llanowar Elf, or in turn 6, just hit him with the Relic Seeker, and that card's a huge swing. So I think I would rather just do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I don't think we're there yet.
Fair enough.
I think that all these green-black decks doing well, though, definitely lowered the power level of Eldest Reborn.
How so?
Because it just sucks tagging like a Stitcher Supplier with it.
Are people are still playing Stitcher Supplier?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Even some of the lists you were looking at, it was...
Man, they need to listen to this podcast.
4 Supplier, 4 Glowspore, Molder Hulk decks.
Yeah.
Oh, that deck's sweet, though. It gets a pass.
Oh, okay.
Hulk decks get a pass.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. God,
Hulk decks are still good, though. Hulk is...
I still haven't played with or against it.
So. That engine is strong.
I love that card.
I've had no real problems beating them with control, especially Grixis control since the changes, though, obviously. I've just been Vraska's contempting their Hulk and then moving on with my life.
Well, yeah, okay.
And then if my Ralzeric lives, they can never kill it. So I'm okay with nobody playing.
Yeah, but imagine if you just can't exile it ever, and then
that's what I'm saying. You got to play for Vraska's Contempt.
Yeah.
This is the problem I mentioned with the Jeskai decks, right? This isn't even a card choice thing as far as like identifying weak cards in the deck. I guess it is in the sense that the Jeskai lists have a bunch of weird burn and Justice Strikes and all this, but they don't have bindings. They don't have Oblivion Rings.
Oh, no. So I've been playing a bunch of various versions of Jeskai decks online, and you just can never beat enchantments or Planeswalker.
Yeah, you just lose. So that was a huge reason for me to play Grixis recently as well was, Jeskai's fun and Teferi's amazing, but like you can only -3 Teferi, the important like Planeswalker, a few times and not counter it before you just give up and are like, I just give me Vraska's Contempt, please.
Yeah.
So maybe when we get the mana for it, we can play Vraska's Contempt Teferi deck. That'll be...
People are still trying.
Aren't there already some of those running
No,
around?
not Esper though, like 4-color. Like Justice Strike, Vraska's Contempt Teferi, Sinister Star.
Yeah, I'm in.
Whoa.
Yeah. Terminate Vraska's Contempt Teferis. Then I'm listening.
Just
Bolus. 5-color control.
No green at all. We can call it the Ghost of Standard Past.
Turn 2, I don't know, do something. Turn 3, Chromatic Lantern. Turn 4, Bolus.
Turn 2, Search for its Canto.
Yeah. Turn 2, Search. Turn 3, Chromatic. Turn 4, Bolus. Turn 5, Teferi.
Why turn 4 Bolus? We have a Chromatic Lantern.
Okay, turn 4, Teferi.
Yeah, there you go.
Turn 5, Bolus with counter backup.
Yeah.
Got him.
You probably died to mono red somewhere along that line.
Yeah, that's where we'll board into Clarions.
Chromatic Lantern makes Teferi's like untap trigger so much better. Just because now you can make 2 mana of any color.
Yeah. Well, who knows what I'll play?
Could be anything.
Could be anything. But so I don't know. Vraska's Contempt I think is just really important right now when you look at the lists that are doing well.
Criminally underplayed.
Definitely criminally underplayed. It's still clunky. Like I get it because it's 4 mana, but it's so clean. You just don't have to think. You're just like, okay, get that walker out of here. And there is a huge increase in walkers. And yeah, like you said, you've been playing some Jeskai, right? What happens when a walker resolves? You're like, I guess I'll try and double lightning strike this thing eventually.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing to get off the board. One card I definitely got smashed by a couple times is Dawn of Hope.
Yeah.
I just played it on turn 2. I'm like, that's gonna do some damage.
Yep.
It's gonna draw some cards. Holy.
Yeah, it's good against the control decks. I mean, it would be insane against Grixis too. I can't say it wouldn't. Like, it just is a problem.
Yeah,
card just confirmed a problem. I think that there's definitely room for just a green-white mid-range deck as well right now. That isn't tokens. That just goes bigger and plays like Lyra's, Karn, Vivian Reed. You know what I mean? Could just be the Abzan decks we've been looking at, right?
Yeah, there's an Abzan deck we were looking at while we were doing show notes that was playing. Where is it? Right here. It's just green-white mid-range stuff with Vraska and Assassin's Trophy and a Fine Finality as black cards.
Yeah. And like a Vivian Reed, a single Ajoni, like I don't know. I think the reason is okay. So, like when I played there's even ones with like Azoni. There was another one that plays like extra planeswalkers, right? Like these Abzan decks, I do like because the sort of Azoni like early Wild Growth Walker, Merfolk Branch Walker strategies, like the unholy trinity of Green Explorer and Gain Life guys.
Mm-hmm.
When I played that in the Gruesome Menagerie deck, I was like, man, against creatures, this is great. Like against creature decks, it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
But then I lost to 7 Wraths. Yeah. And I just never had a good follow-up that wasn't just put more dudes on the board. And if it had been, it was a Jeskai deck, right? And if it had been Planeswalkers, that game's over.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what these Abzan decks are doing, is just hybridizing the sort of all-in graveyard strategy. And instead of playing unplayable standard cards like Stitcher Supplier, they have a follow-up to Wrath that's really hard for control decks to beat right now, especially the Jeskai decks, which are everywhere. And they go, okay, yeah, sure, you killed all my Wild Growth Walker, whatever, slam this Vivian Reed or, whatever these other dumb Planeswalker, Vraska. Vraska 6 is just insane.
She's always been nuts.
Always, yeah. This card's just absurd.
Yeah. She was overshadowed by Scarab God and Hazaret in the previous format.
Exactly, yeah. She was overshadowed by just unbelievable mythics.
But only slightly. Like she was still not like she would still run away with games that one of those other ones weren't on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So it's nice to see her scenes play. Like definitely better than Queen, like 4 mana one. The Queen's still good though.
But yeah, so this whole talk about Abzan decks moving towards like adding planeswalkers, or these green-black decks kind of adding more and more planeswalkers as the list has evolved, is a good example of identifying weak points in these deck lists through a lot of testing, which you just said. Yeah, I could just refill the board over and over, but you would just lose to Wraths.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
And and that's just your entire game plan. But once you've added this other aspect to the deck now, you're no longer just stone dead to that strategy.
It lets you attack at a different angle, which is what the sort of I think this is why I had said previously I don't think the green-black decks are long for this world unless they change their strategy. Because I don't think just the linear, like, play some dudes, they die, gruesome menagerie, them back is good enough.
Yeah.
Like, just the same, I'm just going to do the same thing over and over until you lose. I just think decks can beat that. They get to a point where they're like, that what you're doing over and over again doesn't matter anymore. Whereas if you're coming from different angles, it kind of shuts off some of their card choices and decision making. That's another thing. It makes their decisions a lot more awkward than just like, oh, play Wrath, I have a second one, like, go, you know?
I think the adaptation of these green-black decks is an interesting example of our second bullet point here, which is you need to ignore the best case of your cards when you're considering how good they've been. And like the best case of those green-black decks was like Stitcher Supplier and Glowspore Shaman milled a ton of creatures, and then like Azoni made enough bugs that they just won the next turn.
Yeah, you just alpha them with
Or
Azoni bugs.
They use their removal to answer your board, and then you Gruesome Menagerie and you bring 3 things back, and then those 3 things just kill them because your Gruesome Menagerie was really good and they didn't have removal. And like the best case of those decks are kind of entrancing.
Yeah,
it's something to work towards, and it's this big payoff that then wins you the game. And it sounds like it's great, but that's like when your deck is functioning on all cylinders. Like,
yeah, I mean, Alex saw the one game the deck popped off at the GP when I was playing. Is like it was insane.
Yeah,
but that was the best case, and it was like, holy God, this deck is nuts.
Yeah,
but then I just fail stated.
And then you just lost games 2 and 3.
Yeah, I just fail stated horribly. I just couldn't do anything because I'm playing Stitcher Supplier.
It's important.
Glowspore Shaman, which are medium.
Yeah, it's important to have a good best case in your deck, like nut draws or free wins, but you can't judge all your cards on like them always performing that way.
Yeah, and I think that was a mistake. I was like, oh wow, this deck seems busted, and then played with it more, and I was like,
I've played a lot of Gruesome Menagerie decks online too, and it was lacking that other game plan, which I didn't realize at the time, but yeah, when it was good, it was great, and then the average case was just
medium. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's just medium. It doesn't feel busted.
Yeah.
So maybe, I'm interested if there's a way to cut, some cards like we weren't even playing Stitcher Supplier after a while. We'd moved to Pelt Collector.
Yeah,
it's actually good. Just insane. I'm wondering, can we make some room in that deck for, some Vraska 6, Golgari Queen? Who knows, right?
You certainly can.
Yeah,
Just gotta try a little harder.
No, you definitely can. I mean, you can definitely find room.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might be worth considering, help you attack at different angles. But maybe then you don't want to play Gruesome Menagerie. It's tough, right?
Yeah, I think moving away from Menagerie is the right choice at the moment. It's still cool. There is still a Menagerie deck in the 5-0s.
Yeah.
But it's a strategy that can win, but I like having a set but backup plan.
And it's so linear, you know? It is sweet. The Gruesome boys are sweet.
It is definitely sweet.
And I think it has a good red matchup. Like, it has a good aggro matchup.
Oh, yeah.
Just comical.
You can never lose to mono red.
Well, as long as your Wild Growth Walker lives silver. And if it doesn't, you just Menagerie back and win on the spot.
Yeah.
So
it's very hard for that card to not live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this is like the best case thing too, right? Even against mono red, it's like you could just not draw a Menagerie and then your Wild Growth gets lightning striked and then you're just stuck there with the Jade Lights and Merfolks that can't even block a Chain Whirler and you just die. Like, that definitely happened to me with that deck a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's a deck where its ceiling is like fairly high and looks really sweet, but its average case is pretty medium.
I think another example of a deck with that problem, decks with that problem, is all these Is It 5-0 lists that we were looking at, where we just like didn't understand how they 5-0'd. They're just full of like Shocks and Lightning Strikes and Inescapable Blaze and like Crackling Drakes.
No, okay, whoa. Do not talk shit about Inescapable Blaze on this podcast, my friends. I'm sorry.
Trash and
But like, if you think about
good limited though.
If my opponent plays creatures that my burn spells like do more damage than their toughness in the order I've drawn my burn spells, the deck's going to look nuts.
Yeah.
And it's gonna like, if you do that 5 games in a row, or like 5 matches in a row, you're gonna think that this deck like can't lose because you've just like high rolled best case the entire time. You have to imagine.
How does this deck beat a resolved Gruesome Menagerie?
If anyone wants to look at the
burn.
list we're talking about, is it controlled by Remy 711 in the October 15th deck dump?
Like it's just a bunch of
just
cards
all
that
spells.
Literally 4 Shock, 4 Syncopate, 4 Lightning Strike, 2 Beacon Bolt, which I fail to believe is playable. Fiery Cannonade, 1 Fight with Fire, 4 Ionize, 4 Sinister Sabotage, 4 Inescapable Blaze. Like, it's just,
4 times 6, 24 damage, my friend. That's more than 20.
I just like, if this thing at all fall. Also, the other question is like, can this deck ever win if it? Okay, your opponent is only playing Grizzly Bears, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you mull.
Yeah, that's what the 2 fiery candidates are for.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I guess that's.
Wait,
if they're playing 2/3s, though, you're dead.
What if my Grizzly Bears are pirates?
Ooh.
What if you have to cast a spell to not take 1 billion damage, and then they play a Planeswalker?
I mean,
Inescapable Blaze, luckily, can hit any target
Oh yeah,
for the low cost of 6 mana.
6 mana. I'll get that guy eventually. In the meantime, though, I'm probably gonna die. I just don't get it. I honestly don't get it. I almost don't even want to comment on any of these is-it lists because I don't understand what's happening. Like I'm aware I don't.
I think it's just that, though. Like with Chemister's Insight, letting you discard cards that aren't lining up, you can hopefully find ones that do line up. Search for his Canna lets you kind of get the pick of the burn spell you need. And when everything lines up, yeah, you just have an answer for everything and your opponent can't play magic.
When you have 34 spells in your deck, you're going to tell me Beacon Bolt is not playable?
All right, you got me.
You know how much damage that is?
Is Inescapable Blaze an instant, right? Or is it a sorcery?
It's
It is an instant.
Okay, that helps.
It also can't be countered.
I know.
Yeah, how your control opponent going to counter
You can definitely beat the control mirror with this deck, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll give it that. It's going to probably beat the control mirror. Probably going to lose to creatures.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe I'm wrong. Like, this is one of the cases where I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the Izzet decks that play Niv Mizzet.
Niv Mizzet and Crackling Drake I can get behind. I don't think Crackling Drake's necessarily great, but it's sweet and it's probably okay.
Like this 5-0 list by Scavenging Booze.
Yeah, sweet name.
Awesome name. 4 Drake, 2 Niv Mizzet, 2 Ral.
$44 online. Let's go.
3 Secrets of the Golden City.
People stay standard. It's expensive. Come on.
This is why Izzet decks are so playable, because they're $44 online and everyone can play them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just like crushing mirrors.
Probably.
Playing mirrors or playing against other like cheap decks.
Yeah,
maybe.
or control decks. Like the Izzet decks have to be good against the control decks.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yeah.
You've got a 3-mana draw 3 in your deck.
Yeah. That's nuts.
This deck is so cheap.
Yeah, it's really cheap.
Yeah. Could build this really easily on MTG Arena too. Look, there's only 14 rares, 2 mythics. I'm not kidding. Look.
Yeah, no, it's cheap.
Yeah. Man.
29 commons.
Wait, they have an arena price tag now on MTG Goldfish?
Yeah. It says how many mythics, rares,
see.
uncommons, and commons are.
I didn't see where you were pointing.
Yeah, so you can.
Well, they have like on the right tab, My Price Arena.
Do they?
Yeah, look.
Yeah, online paper arena.
Price based on cards you own. I'm about that. Cards you own. That's pretty funny. Oh, it shows you can link your account so you can see. That's actually pretty funny. That's cool. That's cool,
Yeah,
actually.
it's a nice feature.
MTG Goldfish does a lot of good work. We got to get a sponsorship for those guys. Big fan of their work.
Yeah.
Not like the Goofy Brews. I don't know. Because I do that on my own already. I don't need to watch anyone else do it.
I get
like,
why they're
I'm not dunking
I
on it.
just don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not dunking on it. I actually like it. I just don't have time for more Goofy Brews. I already do that enough on my own. I don't need someone else to be like, hey, check out this other Goofy Brew. I'm like, yeah, I know. I already
brewed this.
Yeah, like I already played this and lost. I already went 0-5 in a league with this band. Like I don't need to see it again.
Okay.
What about, do we want to talk, what do we think of the Jeskai deck with 4 Azur's Gateway?
The expansion explosion.
Because that's a deck with, like, that covers a lot on our show notes. If you go to a lot of the questions we were kind of talking about.
It has a lot of cards with a really bad fail state.
Right?
But that are also nuts if like everything lines up.
Yeah. So the only Azor's Gateway deck I could find from the 5-0s was this one by RNG Specialist.
People's mono names are great.
Holy. No, that's perfect for.
You see why this guy won.
But
why is he playing a devious cover up?
Dude, you can shuffle back. Hear me out.
Oh, right. He's playing it because of what the card says.
Wait, what?
You can counter a spell and then shuffle back your expansion explosion back into your deck.
Oh, yeah.
So you can do it again.
Yikes.
Do you
I-
need any more reasons?
Good thing I got
Didn't
a
think
spare
so.
Not even
4
good
mana.
with Gateway.
So
Maybe he just needed more 4-drops for Gateway.
Yeah, this was the only list I could find. Only 2 copies now, down from 4.
Of Gateway, yeah.
Probably because they realized that card is bad.
Hey, but its ceiling is really, really high.
Yeah.
Its ceiling is
sure is
outrageously high. It's one of the highest ceilings in the format. Just kill you in one shot. Like, yeah, I get it. You know what I mean? I understand the allure.
Yeah.
And I think this is interesting. Like, the fail state on Expansion Explosion in some matchups is not that bad. It's quite good in some matchups.
Yeah.
So it's a card where it sort of fits the criteria of testing is like, well, what's the average case? Well, that depends. What does the meta look like? So there is a world in which, playing 4 of in standard is reasonable, probably strong, probably a really good idea. But there's also a meta, and I think that meta is actually close to now of just a bunch of green-black decks with Planeswalkers and really difficult threats that you don't really want to copy their spells, and it's only good on the explosion side. That card, playing 4 copies, becomes a huge issue.
Yeah. Like you were saying before that you would never play more than 3. It's probably trending a little bit down now if this is what our metagame is going to look like.
Definitely. I think that 3 is a lot, and that's risky, but 3, I could see a world in where it's pretty good. 4 is so many in a deck where it's also playing 3 Chemister's Insight. You know what I mean? I don't know, man. That's a lot.
You just don't want to really draw a second one after, like, until you've cast your first for a lot.
Yo, but Cam, you can loot them away with your Azor's Gateway.
Oh, okay.
Didn't you think about that?
Right, yeah.
Not
We're already the sort of initial 4 package or 8 package, right, of 4 Gateway, 4 Expansion Explosion. We're already moving down from that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that trend, like you said, that trend will continue. But I do think most sort of just real control decks that can cast Expansion Explosion should always play 1 copy.
Yeah.
It's insane to not play at least 1 pop, probably 2.
I think there are types of cards that have kind of analyzing their average case. It kind of has this subtle effect of like the average case of the first copy you draw is quite good. And the second copy, less so.
Yep.
And so like those are the type of cards that you trim down. Like the second copy of Search for Iscana is pretty bad unless, you draw it after your thing is flipped. So that's why they're playing 2. Even if we started at 4, like
the first copy of Azor's Gateway, good. Second copy, fine. Counts as our 2-drop when we pitch it. The third and fourth copy, they don't count for anything. They just do nothing.
Yeah.
So you have to compare average cases like within copies of cards you're playing, not just that card as an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think we're going to see much of this deck anymore. I think it had its flash in the pan.
Yeah.
It's RNG spike.
Yeah.
I definitely think Expansion Explosion is a card that you're going to want to play.
Yeah, that is not a card that...
Because it's just playing 1 or 2, you just want to draw it on turn 10 when you've been fighting hard and, you know what I mean? You finally get your 1 copy and you're like, all right, let's go. Like, this game's over, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can fight over counterspells other ways in the meantime that are safer to play against the broad field of decks. I think that it's too narrow to main 4 and just be like, well, I hope I play against control so I can win the counter wars. That has a lot to go right. Like, first, you get paired against control. Second, that you have enough mana to fight over counterspells with it. It's just, I don't know. Maybe it's okay.
How do you think Teferi lines up in this metagame right now?
Really well.
Can you show your work?
Yeah. I started playing 4 Vraska's Contempt because I would just concede to it before. When it would resolve on an empty board, I would just concede. That's how bad it was, that you can't really kill it. Like, we're talking about how good Planeswalkers line up right now, right? What happens on an empty board when that's their follow-up and you just kind of have, some Chupacabras in hand?
It's still the strongest Planeswalker in Standard, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not close. And it's just sort of, if you're playing the green-black decks and you don't have walkers and proactive threats and you're just sitting there on a couple Chupacabras and they just play Teferi, right, on 5, what do you, like, that's game, right? Unless you have Vraska's Contempts, like, I don't know, what are you doing?
I don't know, a trophy it or something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, trophy helps, but yeah, no, Teferi's still really threatening. I mean, these lists play 4, which is definitely correct. Yeah, it's card is just so absurd.
Still does it all.
Well,
Card
what if
advantage,
how about you ignore its best case?
It's, yeah, I mean, its fail state is apart from getting countered, whatever
Yeah.
it's got countered. I mean, that's everything.
Yeah.
So I'm not counting that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's fail-safe is why you draw it, like it cycles and then they have to use something on it or an attack step on it. Like it's never going to be bad if it resolves. This is a fail state as resolving. Because I mean, like you can't really say it's fail state because it got countered. That's not a real assessment.
Yeah.
You know, because that's every card.
Except for Niv Mizzet.
Yeah, well, that card nuts. Yeah,
that's why that card is nuts.
Yeah, there was the Grixis Dragons list that we had that looked similar to the one we posted in the deck dump.
Let me, it's right here. 4 Sarkhan, 4 Niv Mizzet, 2 Bolas.
Yeah, I'm about this.
3 Eldest Reborn. That's a good number of that card.
Well, yeah, you want to get back your Niv Mizzets.
Yeah.
Because, no, so this is the thing, because this was in the deck dump I posted. It had Eldest Reborns.
Yeah.
And the whole point was actually from Pete. It was a suggestion from Pete where he said, you need to abuse the fact that Eldest Reborn is a free reanimate, and that you need to be playing counterspells so that when you reanimate your Niv Mizzet, you just have a bunch of open mana on the turn that you reanimated it, and then what are they going to fight over Niv Mizzet? Sure. No one wins a fight over Niv Mizzet. You just don't win that fight.
No.
Ever.
Yeah.
So that was a huge reason. So, and I think that...
Yeah, this is the Grixis Dragons list by Alan Villamayer from the October 15th deck dump.
I think this list is strong.
Yeah. And like comparing these threats, like comparing Niv Mizzet to Bolas to Teferi, like, yeah, worst case, they cycle. Like Teferi replaces itself. If they kill Niv and you can't do anything, like you draw a card. Bolas, they discard and then they have to spend another card. They're all just like auto 2-for-1s.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's awesome. Like its threats are really frustrating. You know, Niv Mizzet especially on turn 4. You just get to cast Niv Mizzet on 4.
Yeah, with the Sarkhan, yeah.
With the Sarkhan, like that's so threatening.
Hard to beat.
Right. Like I think I made the mistake that I maybe only played 3. I think I played 4 in the deck dump, but yeah, you definitely just play 4. I think I was playing 4 Bolas is the difference, but yeah, you just 4 and 4, just slam these obnoxiously powerful.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit, since we're talking about card choices and evaluations. I've been playing a lot of control decks online. A lot of the lists I see floating around aren't playing enough syncopates, in my opinion, right now.
Agreed.
Not only is that card nuts versus jumpstart cards, also green-black Eldest Reborn decks. And I see a lot of control decks playing like 2 copies, maybe 1 copy. But I think this is a 3 or 4 max out on syncopates format.
Yeah, I don't know if max, but I could see 3. It's just exiling things, like you said, is just so important. But it's not necessary, but it helps. You know, it's like Cam mentioned last week, like, are the green blacks really that great? Because no one's sideboarding for graveyards. That's how you know there's something wrong. But then again, on Moto, like a lot of the Moto PTQ results are all green black decks, but who knows exactly how is everyone playing green black?
Yeah.
Like it's the most played deck, but not by a lot. So, I mean, we'll see what happens, but we already see people shifting away from it, of just the sort of standardized unholy trinity, right? But yeah, no, Syncopate just is good on the play. If you need to snag a 2-drop, it's insane in the control mirror of just getting a, Chemister's Insight. It does a lot. Exiling is important. So yeah, stopping a creature from coming back with Eldest Reborn. So yeah, I agree. I'm just not sure. Like I would have to see if it lines up, but I can definitely see a world in which we should be playing more.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And that's, I guess, kind of identifies the first or the third step, right? Is in testing.
Yeah, in context.
Yeah, all things should be contextual for how to use your cards, right?
Yeah.
Of why they're good in this format. Because cards change, right? It's like I said, there's maybe a world where 4 Expansion Explosion is right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to be testing against the right sort of gauntlet of decks to have any relevant results.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like we don't evaluate these card choices in a vacuum, which is something Magic players like to refer to a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't play games in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
Cards don't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah. Turn that damn thing up
Don't
and
say
try
it.
to cast spells. Yeah. That's part of it. So, I mean, the first step of sort of, compare fail state to average case when you play. This is a general thing. You could almost do this goldfishing your deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Step 2 of sort of ignore the best case because that's not relevant. Yeah, the ceiling is really high, but that doesn't mean it's good in and of itself. That it takes a little more nuance than that. The third step is, it has to be contextually good. It has to fit within the format and the metagame of what's happening. This is why, I said, MTG Goldfish is such a great resource. I use these different resources. I use MTG Top 8 sometimes just for card searching for what's going on. Because it can give you a list of, these are the 10 most played cards. We used to laugh about it last season in the summer, remember? We look at the top 10 cards for 6 months
just
straight.
Half the red-black deck.
It was just red cards with duress.
And Scrap Scrounger.
Yeah, Scrap Heap Scrounger and duress, and then 8 red cards.
Yeah.
And that was, so we know what's going on.
Yeah.
What do they show right now?
Oh.
But
let's find out.
And again, man, Expansion Explosion is such context is important, but there's also the fourth step of identifying multiple uses for a card. And Expansion Explosion, it fits that. It fits so many things in this 4-step process of identifying whether a card's good or not, but it's sort of. It's in its context, right? It's the third step. It's its context that limits it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it could, in context, have multiple uses and be incredible, aka everything's a control mirror. Yeah, nuts.
Yeah.
But number 3, context matters for evaluating these card choices and testing. Well, what am I doing this against?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, you're not going to play only control mirrors. Always.
The dream, as Magic was meant to be played.
Top cards in this deck dump. Number 1, multi-format all-star.
Can't stop it.
Can't stop duress.
Yeah.
I expected that to be Thought Erasure.
Duress just insane. Last season, it was a top 10 card. Every time it's in Standard, it's a top 10 card just because it's so flexible in the sideboard. It does exactly what you want it to do in the sideboard.
Man, we have a card of every color on this list. It's been a hot minute since that's happened.
Oh, has it ever?
Wow.
That is wild. Yeah, because we used to laugh, hey, there's no white cards again.
Yeah, or there was no green for years.
There's no white and green for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we got Lyra in the top 10, Jade Light Rangers, Llanowar Elves.
Yeah, Negate, Lava Coil, Elves, Jade Light, Chupacabra, Lyra, Chemister's Insight, Syncopate, Disdainful Stroke.
People are playing enough
People are
Syncopates.
playing Syncopates.
Yeah,
They're
are.
figuring it out.
Yeah, they definitely know in this deck dump. But last week, no.
A lot of these, none of these cards really surprise me.
These
Lava Coil's interesting. That's a lot of copies, being number 3 on the list.
Yeah, 30% of decks. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's the Boros deck's way to punch through, right?
Yeah. Oh,
and mono red. It's
those Izzet decks are probably playing.
Those Izzet decks gotta kill stuff. They gotta kill a Steel Leaf champion.
You gotta exile stuff somehow.
And that too. I mean, Lava Coil lines up. It's the incidental exile you want, right? And I mean, that's similar to why I had Lava Coil in my Grixis list. Obviously, my Grixis control. So my deck list is Lava Coil, Vraska's Contempt. That's really good right now in the format, right? Those removal spells together cover a lot of the spread. That there were times my opponent played an Eldritch Reborn and got a bolus. Or what did they get? I can't remember. No, they got nothing. They just played it out because they had nothing to do. And, because they're going to get the second and third value.
Mm-hmm.
But then the next creature they played, I didn't kill. Vraska's Contempted it. I had also Lava Coiled the other ones. And so by the time that, I discarded a land, and then the third thing did nothing. There was nothing that wasn't in exile. So, yeah, it lines up really well.
Yeah.
Lava Coil's good for that.
Yeah.
Llanowar Elf's not surprising.
Nope.
Cards.
Then the nature of these lists is there's generally a lot of sideboard cards.
Yeah. Stroke. Chemister's Insight everywhere. Yeah. That's a card that I admit I didn't think would be as good in Standard as it is. But the fact that the front side you don't really care if it gets countered is huge.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think just after playing a bunch of Control so far is you just want that effect, a 4-mana draw 2. You want to do something on turn 4.
Yeah.
Just to bridge the gap,
Yep. Yeah, and just the fact that you can pitch dead cards to it is just huge. It's what makes the card so good. Mm-hmm. The fact that you can pitch dead draws to it is just wild. So, yeah, I was wrong about that. I thought it would be played. I just didn't think it'd be as good as it is. I'm really impressed by it. I think it's one of the best cards in the format because of the versatility it offers, the decisions it offers. It has a lot of decisions to it. So, yeah, a big fan of it, actually. It's a lot of Disdainful Stroke in the sideboard. You know what's crazy, though? I've seen people, you sometimes see people cutting Llanowar Elves out of their green decks, and I just don't buy it.
Yeah, we have seen a few green-black decks, even green-white deck, that the only tokens deck in this deck dump isn't playing Llanowar Elves.
Yeah, a lot of the tokens decks don't. I still like it in tokens a lot. I think it's really good in tokens, but Not playing it in the green-black decks seem wild to me, especially if we move up on Planeswalkers.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Abzan decks. I mean, the Abzan mana is base green.
I've heard, like, an argument I've heard is that people don't want to play Llanowar Elves if they're not stocking up on 3 drops to cast on turn 2. But, like, the card's not bad if it's not casting a 3-drop on 2. Like, it's still good if it's casting a 5-drop on 4.
Or a 3-drop, or a 4-drop on 3.
Right, like, anything ahead of curve on any turn is good. Like, just because you don't have a use for it immediately after you untap on playing it on 1, like, it can attack for 1.
Yeah. No, and sometimes you just want to play your 2-drop out, and then you play your 4-drop, and then 5 a turn early. Like, that's huge. The other thing is late game, if they Eldest Reborn you can sack it. Like, it's, I don't know. I think it does a lot. I think it's hard to justify being a green-black deck and not playing it.
I agree.
Really hard. The card just is so incredibly powerful. Like, Llanowar busted. No, in fact.
But let's use our handy dandy list here to maybe go about thinking why people would be cutting this card. So comparing its fail state to its average case.
I mean, its average case is you're ahead on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, you cast it on turn 1 and you just get to play ahead of curve.
Well, you cast it, turn 1 or 2 and play ahead of curve in the mid game.
Yeah.
And its fail state is it's a top deck late game.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I agree. That's really bad. But I think its average case is it ramps you into a better mid game. Right? And I think, though, it would...
Well, at what turn in the game does it lose that value?
Past 1 or 2, probably. Unless you're stuck on lands, whatever, and then it can tag in for a land, a turn later. Which is awkward, sure. But I think that the benefit of resolving early Planeswalkers against some matchups might be worth it. And I think before I get it more, when it was like sort of maybe Mulder Hulk style stuff where it's not really that important that you get it out early because you're just going for a late game engine. You just want to enable it with Stitcher Supply or Glowspore. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And you just want to have action, whatever. Maybe when the decks were playing just mostly Eldest Reborns on 5 or Doom Whisperers, it's not too insane to ramp to those things. But now if we're talking about Vraska 6, then I want to ramp to that thing very fast. Or in some green-white decks, like green-white mid-range decks, the ability for, turn 1 Elf, turn 2 Thorn Lieutenant Elf, next turn Lyra, right?
Yeah.
Is really good. And obviously I shouldn't be using that's its highest.
Yeah.
It's, is that you go 1-drop, 2-drop, 1-drop, Lyra, right? That's its ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's hard to say, but I think, ignoring that, following our rules, I think that its average of just casting a 4-drop ahead of curve might be worth it.
I think, like, another thing to consider about its average case is that you can cast 2 spells in a turn ahead of curve. Like, your 4-drop on 3 is good, but, like, if your opponent's playing their 5-drop on 5 and you're playing 2 spells, like, that might even just be better than playing a card ahead of curve.
Yeah, even just having, let's say, I don't know, turn 3 play, or turn 4, I go Jade Light Ranger, cast down your guy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's because I have Elf. That's big. Like, it creates a big tempo swing. That sort of mana advantage is really big.
Yeah, and that's not hard
its
to
average
do.
case.
Yeah.
So, I think it's definitely... it's ideal because now we're playing for the ceiling of I have Jade Light Rangers. I have busted 3-drops that I'm going to play on turn 2. Yeah, that's just awesome. That's the ceiling. The average case is probably that I get to double spell earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're under pressure from aggro decks or you're trying to force stuff through, I think that's probably the more average case for Elf. So I think it's still very, very good.
And I think the fail state is also offset somewhat. Like, it's a slightly better draw than a land late game, which is also bad. But gives you a deck building some freedom to cut. Like, usually people cut 2 lands and then add 4 Llanowar. So is it really that different? Like, is that risk really that much greater than if you were just playing 2 extra lands instead of the elves?
Yeah, it's pretty minor.
Yeah.
And the potential in a deck like Green Stompies, you just win because your curve is just too fast and too powerful.
Yeah. Is there an argument to be made for certain mid-range decks that playing ahead of the curve just because you instead of playing Llanowar Elves, you just get to play 4 other more powerful cards on curve, that the power increase in cards that you get outweighs playing ahead of curve?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's sort of the heart and soul of a lot of mid-range strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
That one of these things is worth your Llanowar and whatever you played on turn 3 or 2.
Yeah.
Right? That this one card is worth that, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we're there in the format yet, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was just kind of wondering.
Yeah,
maybe.
no, I know. And I think it depends what planeswalkers we're playing with Llanowar Elf. Like Vraska. If we're playing Vraska Golgari Queen, then it makes it a lot more palatable.
That's a card I'd like to play with Llanowar Elf.
Right. Like there are certain things, like if you're playing a Johnny and you're green-white, Llanowar Elf average a little better.
Yeah.
Right? It just depends.
Yeah.
So, and I think when it was just like Eldest Reborns, it didn't, when they didn't have a bunch of planeswalkers to get out a little faster.
Yeah.
The downside with it is there's a lot of Clarions going around, and that's a beating. I will say that. So, but I mean, hey, 4th most played card.
Yeah, I mean,
scoreboard.
I could totally see your reasoning for it or against it, and
yeah, I'm not going to crucify you for not playing it.
Yeah,
I just think like it was pseudo banned in Standard for years because WotC thought it was too strong.
Yeah,
and generally they put things into the format that are too strong. So if they think that is too powerful, that means they think it's more powerful than Hazoret. It's more powerful than Scarab God.
Like,
can't argue with that.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, you're right.
Or at least as powerful because they brought it back.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, thought experiment. I think even part of it is let's say you're playing a mirror and the difference is you have Llanowar Elves, but they have 4 more powerful cards, but 2 more lands. Like, there are going to be games where you just get ahead on tempo, and then the sort of I play a good card doesn't really matter because they're on the back foot the entire time, and they don't get to double spell, and you just tempo them out. So it gives these sort of mid-rangey decks a way to speed through people in the mirror, which can definitely, that is how you win a lot of those games. It feels like, you definitely sacrifice some late game, but that might not matter when they're forced to chump, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So all of this is a good argument for Llanowar Elves, and all relating back to the list, you have to, like, looking at the failed state, you have to, a lot of people think, oh, hey, yeah, Llanowar Elf sucks. It's such a terrible draw late, and they disregard it. But they're just not comparing that fail state to the average case.
Also,
which is a good example.
What's the fail state of just being behind on curve all the time because your opponent plays Llanowar and you don't? Fail state's your dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
I know I'm obviously exaggerating here.
The fail state of every card is I drew it when I was behind and I died. Card sucks.
Yeah. Like, but you know what I mean? That they had Llanowar on one. Like, okay, let's take the green stompy mirror. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You probably lose if they go Llanowar Elf go, and you just land go. And then they play Steel Leaf, and then you pass, and you play like a Thorn Lieutenant. And then they play, Ferox, and you have a Thorn Lieutenant, and they're attacking you with Steel Leaf. That's probably game.
Yeah.
Like it just puts you so far ahead in certain matchups that, it's hard for me to imagine cutting it just because of the power level of mana advantages. Fast mana's.
Fast mana.
I mean, I realize it's on a vulnerable body, but hey, man. I think the junk decks, absent, these mid-range decks are probably nonsense. But I think the strategy of moving to more planeswalkers is something I like, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I am very excited to see an actual real big tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. There's a lot of card choices you can make right now, and the meta is wild. Like, it's unclear. I think that's why the green-black decks are still doing really well, though, is that they're probably generically good.
Yeah. Well, it's just a bunch of green-black good cards from your trade binder that you just sleeved up, and let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious deck.
Yeah.
Hey, this card's has the undergrowth on them, and they're good.
Yeah.
Or whatever, just green-black stuff, right? It's good. It's a good deck. So... But I think what'll happen is people will kind of make evaluations, say, well, they can't beat this. They have a hard time with these planeswalkers because they don't really play a lot of Assassin Trophies Vraska attempts, play the gameplay this way. And the deck will have to change when, like you said, we're already seeing it.
Yep. Yeah.
Man, Standard's so interesting right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really know what else to say because
we're going a little bit over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I already talked about the sort of our last point too, right? Which is identify multiple uses for the cards in your deck list, and this helps you in testing, right? Is that was this card only good in this exact scenario, right? Does it only do this thing?
Mm-hmm.
This is the classic DWC strat of does your card pivot?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, like, we put this point on here. I forget what the example was when we put this point on here, but there was something that Adam and I had tested or were trying to test, and it wasn't good. We couldn't quite make it work because we had the wrong use in mind. Do you remember what this was, Adam?
No.
But we started, like, rather than like saving, I don't think it was a removal spell, but rather than saving it, we started spending it aggressively, or rather than like trying to get a lot of value out of a creature, we would just throw it at the opponent and make them block. And like once we changed how we used a card, it became a lot better.
Yeah, that's an important thing to remember is that, you have to try playing your cards in different ways, like how you want to use them, because in testing, it can appear a card isn't as great as it is because you're playing it wrong.
Right. Like, for example, we've been talking about Expansion Explosion a lot, and maybe you have in your mind that it's going to draw you a lot of cards, and that's why you're playing it. You have some mana ramp, and so you don't want to cast it for 2 or 3, and you're saving it, and you're doing other things with your turns, and you end up dying, and you think this card's not good, I can't cast it. Maybe expansion for 2 is fine. Maybe just getting those cards, getting it out of your hand so you can do other things is fine. But if you think that's an unacceptable use and you don't try it, maybe you'll never know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely an important part. Man, Expansion Explosion is such an interesting card for this whole conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's such a flexible card. It does so many different things, right? But it's...
Even like what...
Fail state is weird. And
if you're using expansion, what spells you're copying?
Right.
Just changing that could change how the card performs in a list.
Right, or people playing a bunch of Thought or Azur's main, and you get to get them. Well, they get you, but,
Yeah, you get each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Food for thought.
Yeah. It's interesting. Not sure. I'll be pondering this one.
Tune in next week.
Let us know as well what your thoughts are on this. Addressing the sort of floor, ceiling, and average of Expansion Explosion and other cards like this, and how you think about things in a deck. I'm always curious what listeners think. I like hearing these sort of things and people's take on these cards from a sort of, philosophical deck building discussion, right? Of, well, what do you want to do and what matters? Is it like, how do you go about testing cards in this deck? And maybe if you have another strategy that you didn't use. Like, there are certain things I'm sure people test and use to test that are obvious to them that I have never thought of. This is a non-magic related thing, but I was talking to a class about how to, what do you use to edit your papers?
Word.
Yeah. And then, but this girl at the back actually had the smartest thing I'd ever heard, and I'd never heard of this before. Because I said, when you write an essay in university, you should read it out loud to yourself as one of the strategies to proofread, because you hear if it sounds dumb or if there's a mistake, you'll hear it. But you also maybe don't want to just read whatever, right? And she goes, oh, I just put the whole thing, copy-pasted into Google Translate and hit play, and it reads it back to you. And you can just put on headphones and sit there and just listen to your whole paper and hear if something sounds awkward or whatever. And I was like, man, that is genius. I would never have thought of that, ever.
That's cool.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's incredible. That's so smart. I was like, you can hear if there's awkward phrasing, if something isn't clear.
I've heard the trick of
and you don't have to read it out loud, so you're not focusing on just reading.
I've heard that a lot of little punctuation or spelling mistakes are missed because you already know what you've written. So as you read it, you glance over them.
Yep. Yeah. That
and
happens
so
a
I've
lot.
heard if you read your sentence, read the words in your sentence backwards, you'll notice spelling mistakes.
Yeah, that's so time consuming, but you could just hit spell check too.
Is it any? I don't use spell checker. I don't need it.
But anyway, it's an interesting way of testing something that I hadn't thought of. So I'm just curious if listeners have these crazy ways where they're this is how I test if this card's good. I just have a scenario I run it through,
Yeah, let us know.
Because
I'm actually very interested.
Yeah, because hearing that story, I'm like, man, I bet there's so many ways people test decks and test cards. Do you just take it to an F&M? Do you know what I mean? But I bet there's so many ways we hadn't thought of. And any sort of additional info we could share with other people as well is sweet. So,
you know what I really want a good method of testing? Whether the inside of a pizza pocket is hot and the outside's cold enough to eat.
Yeah, I know.
Does anyone know?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Can't you just
we could use a
thermometer?
but
Isn't
that's
that easy?
Pizza pots are not fancy enough to justify using thermometers.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how bad do you
I'm
want
gonna
to
go get
know?
some right now. Actually, wrap this thing up.
Yeah, all it comes down to is how bad do you want to know? How much pride do you have?
I'll just burn the roof of my mouth. I'm fine. That's some hot cheese.
Okay. Thank you all for joining the club this week.
I don't know. Maybe someone's got a good trick. Maybe you stack them up in the microwave or something.
Make sure, as always, you check out wizardtower.com for all your magic cycle needs. If you want to support this podcast, you can find us on patreon.com/DWC Podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1 and Facebook at the Disorganized Wizard Club Podcast. If you want to get in contact with us, shoot us a like, shoot us a follow, send us a message. Love hearing from listeners. And however you listen to this podcast, whether it's on Podbean, iTunes, podcast app, leave us a review, rate the podcast, share it with your friends. It really is the best way to keep this thing growing and bring it to new listeners. And
You'll be doing them a favor.
You get to
think about that way.
To get to hear our spunky, charming banter.
Yeah, they're just missing out. You just want to introduce them to the gospel of
of our charm and joy. Couldn't even finish your sentence. Huge yikes. That's some self-advertising if I've ever seen it.
All right. We'll catch you all next week.
Bye. Later.